In a small town where the streets were narrow and the houses stood close to each other, there lived a young girl who loved music more than anything else. She had discovered the piano when she was very little, and ever since it had become her world. There was something magical about the way her fingers moved over the keys, creating sounds that could make her heart feel light or heavy, happy or sad. She would often sit by the window in her small room, watching the sunlight fall on the piano keys while she played, imagining that the world outside was listening to her music. Her family knew she had a gift, but the town was not always kind to people who followed unusual paths. Children and even some adults would often giggle when they saw her carrying her small music book around, whispering to each other about how she spent too much time with the piano, instead of playing regular games or joining the neighborhood activities. They did not understand her world, the world where every note mattered, where every pause held a story, but she did not care much about their laughter. Music was her companion, her friend, and her escape from the ordinary. Every evening, after finishing her chores and homework, she would slip away to the old community hall where a slightly worn-out piano waited. It was not a grand piano and the keys were sometimes sticky or uneven, but to her it was perfect. She would press the keys softly at first, then with more confidence letting the melodies rise and fall like a gentle wave. She loved the feeling of creating something from silence, of turning the empty air into music that could touch invisible corners of the heart. One day, the town announced a small cultural gathering at the local community center. Everyone was invited and children were encouraged to showcase any talents they had. She saw it as an opportunity to play for more than just herself. She imagined herself stepping onto the stage, her fingers dancing over the keys and the audience listening in awe. But when she told some of her peers about her plan, they laughed. They laughed in a way that made her cheeks burn and her stomach twist with nervousness. "Do you really think anyone wants to hear you play?" one of them asked, smirking. "You're just wasting your time." The words stung, but she tried not to let them affect her. Deep down, she knew that music was not about pleasing everyone. It was about expressing herself, telling stories without words and feeling alive in every note. Still, the laughter echoed in her mind as she practiced in the quiet of her room, making her wonder if she could really do it, if she could make the music so powerful that no one could ignore it. She spent hours practicing, sometimes until her fingers ached, sometimes until the stars outside her window blinked down at her in approval. She started with simple tunes, learning to control the sound, the rhythm, and the emotions in each piece. She watched videos of piano players from faraway places trying to copy their style, but always adding her own touch. She realized that it was not just about playing the right notes. It was about telling a story through the piano, letting each key speak what words could not. Despite her passion, the ridicule continued. Some of the older kids in the neighborhood would sneak into the hall while she practiced, snickering and making fun of the sound she produced. They would imitate the notes and call her silly names. Each time this happened, a part of her wanted to run away, to hide the piano forever and stop dreaming about the stage. But another part of her, the stronger part, whispered that she could not let fear and mockery decide her path. Music was not just a hobby. It was a piece of who she was. She began to notice small changes in herself. She could feel the music in her bones, in the way she moved, in the way her heart beat with the rhythm. Even when no one was around, she imagined an audience, their eyes wide, listening to every note, feeling every pause. She learned to lose herself in the sound, forgetting the mockery, forgetting the doubts, and feeling the pure joy of creating something beautiful from nothing. One rainy afternoon, she was practicing a piece she had been working on for weeks. The rain tapped against the windows in a steady rhythm, blending with the music in a way that made her feel as if the entire world had paused to listen. She closed her eyes and let the notes flow, letting her emotions guide her fingers. The sound of the piano mixed with the soft rain created a melody that seemed to reach into the hearts of anyone who imagined it. In that moment, she knew why she could not stop playing. It was not about approval or recognition. It was about connection, about touching something invisible, about speaking without words. Her family watched from a distance, amazed at how the music had changed her. They could see the concentration, the dedication, and the joy on her face. They never mocked her. Instead, they quietly supported her, making sure she had time and space to practice. They understood that this was not just a passing interest, but a lifelong passion that was slowly shaping her into someone extraordinary. One day, a neighbor, who had always been skeptical of her piano playing, peeked through the window and stopped in surprise. The girl was playing with such intensity and emotion that it was impossible not to notice. The neighbor's eyes softened and a small smile appeared on her face. For the first time, the laughter was replaced by curiosity and appreciation. This small recognition, though brief, filled the girl with hope. She realized that someday, the music she loved so much could reach more hearts than she ever imagined. As the days passed, she continued her practice with quiet determination. The mockery from others became background noise, something she could ignore. She discovered that when she focused on her music, she felt stronger, braver, and more alive. Each note she played was a step toward proving not to others, but to herself that she could create something meaningful. Each melody she composed was a story, a reflection of her dreams, her struggles, and her unwavering spirit. The small town, which once laughed at her attempts, had no idea that they were witnessing the growth of someone who would one day make them listen in awe. The girl did not know exactly what the future held, but she felt a quiet certainty that the piano would be her guide, her companion, and her voice in a world that often tried to silence those who dared to follow their passion. And so, in the stillness of her room, with the soft glow of the evening light and the worn-out keys under her fingers, she played. She played not for the applause, not for recognition, but for the love of the music that flowed through her. And with each note, she felt herself becoming stronger, more confident and ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She knew the path would not be easy, but she also knew that her music was worth every moment of struggle, every ounce of perseverance, and every quiet hour spent chasing a dream that belonged solely to her. The girl's days began to revolve entirely around the piano. Each morning, before the sun had fully risen, she would wake up quietly and practice in the small room at home. The world outside was still asleep, and the calmness gave her a sense of peace. She felt that in these moments the music was her secret companion, listening to her, responding to her, and guiding her fingers with invisible hands. Every sound she produced seemed to awaken a new sense of purpose within her, a confidence that she had never felt before. She started keeping a notebook beside the piano, jotting down melodies that came to her mind. Sometimes she would hum a tune and immediately try to play it. Other times she would write down a feeling like happiness, sadness, or longing, and then experiment on the keys until she could hear that emotion in the music. She realized that the piano was not just an instrument, but a way to capture her inner world and share it without speaking. Her ideas became more complex, and her playing more expressive as she learned to listen to the sounds in her mind and translate them into music. Even though the ridicule from neighbors and peers had faded slightly, it had not disappeared entirely. Occasionally, she would hear snide remarks from the streets outside her window, or whispers when she walked through the town. But by now, she had developed a shield made of determination and love for her art. She no longer allowed their words to control her emotions or her practice. Instead, she used them as fuel, letting them remind her why it was important to keep going. Each laugh that was meant to discourage her became a note of strength in her mind, pushing her to try harder and aim higher. Her family watched her grow with pride. They could see that she was becoming more disciplined, more patient, and more in touch with herself through her music. They did not interfere but supported her by making sure she had time to practice, encouraging her when she felt doubt, and sometimes simply sitting quietly in the next room, listening to her play. Their quiet presence gave her a sense of security. She knew that even if the world outside mocked her, her family believed in her, and that belief became a foundation she could always rely on. The girl began to explore different styles of music. She experimented with soft, gentle melodies that sounded like whispers, then moved on to faster, more energetic pieces that made her feel alive and daring. She learned to play songs that expressed joy, songs that carried sorrow, and songs that told stories of distant places she had never seen. Each practice session became an adventure, a journey where her imagination and skill grew together. She discovered that the piano could become whatever she wanted it to be, a friend, a storyteller, or a mirror of her own soul. One afternoon, while she was practicing a particularly challenging piece, she realized that her fingers were moving more confidently than ever before. The notes flowed smoothly, and the rhythm seemed natural, almost as if the piano itself was guiding her. She stopped for a moment and listened to the music she had created. It was not perfect, but it carried an authenticity that touched her heart. In that instant, she understood that progress was not about perfection, but about expression. about being true to herself and letting the music speak. With this new understanding, she started to push herself further. She learned to play longer pieces that demanded focus, patience, and endurance. She discovered the importance of dynamics, soft and loud, slow and fast, and how they could change the way a melody made someone feel. She realized that each note had power, and how it was played mattered as much as what note it was. Her relationship with the piano deepened, becoming less about learning songs and more about creating experiences, both for herself and for those who might someday hear her play. The girl also began to notice the impact of her music on others, even in small ways. Sometimes, when she practiced in the community hall, a few curious neighbors would stop and listen from the doorway. They would not clap or cheer, but she could sense their attention and perhaps a change in how they viewed her talent. Their silence, which had once felt intimidating, now became a sign that music could communicate beyond words. She realized that the piano could touch people, even without recognition or applause, and that idea made her feel even more connected to her art. As she grew older, she faced challenges that went beyond ridicule. Sometimes her hands would hurt from long practice sessions, or she would make mistakes that frustrated her. Other times she felt lonely, thinking about friends who spent time together in ways she could not. But she learned to balance her feelings, understanding that the journey of growth often came with struggles. She would rest when needed, return to her music with a clear mind, and continue to improve, knowing that perseverance was as important as talent. The girl also started imagining herself performing on a stage, picturing how it would feel to play for an audience. She thought about the expressions on people's faces, the way music could make them feel emotions they could not describe, and how powerful it would be to connect with strangers through sound. This vision gave her hope and motivation, and she realized that the mockery she had once faced was only a small part of the path to achieving something meaningful. Her dream was no longer just to play. It was to make others feel the way she felt when she played, alive and free. She practiced in all kinds of weather and at all times of the day. Rainy afternoons, sunny mornings, and quiet nights all became opportunities to play. She experimented with the mood of her music to match the environment, the rhythm of raindrops, the warmth of sunlight, or the stillness of night. In doing so, she discovered a new level of creativity. Her compositions became richer and more emotional. She was no longer simply learning notes. She was learning life, understanding emotions, and learning to communicate them through music. Her neighbors began to notice the change. Some of them, who had once laughed or whispered, now paused with curiosity when they heard her playing. It was subtle at first. A head turned in her direction, a soft smile, a quiet nod, but it mattered to her. She realized that persistence and dedication could slowly shift people's perception, even if it was just one person at a time. This understanding made her feel stronger and more determined to continue. The girl's connection with the piano grew deeper every day. It became her diary, her voice, her companion in solitude. When she felt joy, she played with light and flowing melodies. When she felt sadness, the music became slow and heavy, carrying her emotions out into the world. When she felt restless or anxious, she found release in complex harmonies and rhythmic patterns. The piano had become a way for her to process her life, to express what words could not capture, and to create something lasting from her feelings. As months passed, her confidence grew. She realized that the ridicule she had faced was no longer relevant because she had developed something much stronger: self-belief. She had discovered that her music had the power to change her own world, and perhaps one day it could change the world of others. She did not need to prove herself to the people who had laughed. She needed to prove to herself that she could create, endure, and grow, and that was enough. In her quiet moments, she often imagined the future. She pictured herself on a stage playing a piece that she had created, with an audience completely absorbed in the music. She imagined the moment when someone would realize that the girl they once ridiculed had a gift that could inspire, move, and captivate. This vision gave her hope, even on days when progress felt slow or the world seemed indifferent. It reminded her that the journey itself was valuable, that each practice session, each note played, and each challenge overcome was a step closer to something extraordinary. Through this journey, she learned the value of patience. She learned that talent alone was not enough. It had to be nurtured, practiced, and refined with care. She learned to listen, not just to the piano but to herself and the emotions that guided her. She learned to trust her instincts, to explore new sounds, and to embrace mistakes as opportunities to grow. These lessons became part of her character, shaping not only her music but also her resilience and outlook on life. By the end of this period in her life, she had transformed from a timid girl who feared ridicule into a determined young musician who trusted her abilities. She had discovered the depth of her passion, the strength of her dedication, and the power of music to express what could not be said. Her journey was far from over, but she had laid a foundation that could carry her forward, giving her the confidence to face future challenges and the courage to share her gift with the world. And so, with each day that passed, she continued to play, learn, and grow. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a reflection of her soul, a path to her dreams, and a reminder that perseverance, passion, and belief in oneself could overcome even the harshest doubts. She knew that one day her music would speak louder than any words of mockery, and she felt ready for the moment when the world would finally listen. Months passed, and the young girl continued to practice with a determination that had become almost a part of her daily routine. Every day she discovered something new, a subtle shift in a melody or a delicate balance in rhythm that she had never noticed before. The piano had become a place where she could express everything she felt, and it was also teaching her patience and focus in ways that extended beyond music. Each note she played was a reflection of herself, and she could feel herself growing stronger, braver, and more certain of her dreams. One day, the local community center announced a small music festival. It was a modest event, not widely advertised, but it promised an opportunity for local musicians, especially young talents, to perform in front of a live audience. When she heard about it, a mix of excitement and nervousness stirred inside her. She had always dreamed of playing in front of people, yet the memory of ridicule from the past made her hesitate. Still, the thought of finally letting others hear her music, of sharing the stories that lived in her melodies, was too powerful to ignore. She spent the next few weeks preparing. She chose a piece that she had perfected over months, one that told a story of hope, struggle, and perseverance. Every morning she practiced, refining each passage, making sure her fingers could move freely and confidently. She experimented with timing, learning when to linger on a note and when to let the music move swiftly. She listened closely to the emotions the piece evoked and adjusted her touch to ensure it conveyed the story she wanted. The piano became her voice, and through it she rehearsed the courage she would need to face the audience. Despite her preparation, doubt often crept in. Sometimes she would imagine the audience laughing, whispering, or shaking their heads as they had in the past. She would feel a tightness in her chest, and the piano suddenly seemed heavy beneath her hands. In these moments, she took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and reminded herself why she played. It was not for them. It was for her. She played because music was the language of her heart, because it gave her a sense of freedom, and because it was a way to express what words could not. The day of the festival arrived. The community hall was decorated with simple banners and chairs arranged neatly for the audience. Parents, neighbors, and a few curious townspeople gathered, chatting softly as the performers prepared. The girl arrived early, carrying her music sheet and a small notebook of melodies she had written herself. She found a quiet corner and began to play softly, letting her fingers dance over the keys one last time before stepping onto the stage. When it was her turn, she felt her heart race. She walked to the piano, feeling the weight of anticipation and the echo of past ridicule. The hall seemed larger than it had ever felt, and the audience looked like a sea of faces, all waiting and watching. She took a deep breath, sat on the piano bench, and placed her fingers gently on the keys. The room grew quiet, and in that silence she found a strange sense of calm. She reminded herself that she was ready, that she had worked hard, and that the music was her story to tell. As she began to play, the first notes filled the hall. They were soft, tentative at first, but soon her confidence grew, and the melody expanded, reaching every corner of the room. The piece was alive, carrying emotion with each phrase, ebbing and flowing like a river. She played with the depth of feeling she had nurtured over months of practice, letting the piano speak her thoughts, fears, hopes, and dreams. The audience, initially quiet and unsure, began to listen intently, drawn into the story she was telling through the music. With each passing minute, the girl felt herself becoming one with the piano. Her fingers moved as if guided by an invisible hand, her heart beating in rhythm with the notes. She closed her eyes, lost in the sound, and felt a sense of freedom she had never known before. The music carried her, and she realized that in that moment the fear of judgment no longer existed. There was only her and the piano, and the story they were telling together. As the piece reached its climax, a wave of emotion swept through the hall. Faces softened, eyes widened, and a few people even held their breath, captivated by the depth and beauty of the performance. The girl could sense the transformation in the room. The same people who had once laughed at her determination were now silent, listening with awe. She had not only played the notes but had conveyed the journey behind them, the struggles, the persistence, the love for music that had fueled her every day. When the final note faded, the hall remained still for a moment, as if the world had paused to absorb the impact. Then slowly the audience began to clap. The applause was not thunderous, but it was sincere and heartfelt, carrying respect and admiration. The girl opened her eyes and smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her. She had done it. She had faced her fears, shared her story, and made people truly listen. The pride she felt was not in the applause alone, but in knowing that she had stayed true to herself and her passion. After the performance, people approached her with smiles and words of encouragement. Some apologized for not understanding her dedication before, while others expressed amazement at her talent and emotional expression. She listened quietly, feeling a mix of humility and joy. She realized that recognition was meaningful, but it was the journey, the hours of practice, the moments of doubt, the perseverance that had shaped her and made this moment possible. The experience left a lasting impact on her. She understood that the path to mastery and fulfillment was not easy, and that it often required facing fear, doubt, and criticism. But she also learned that the rewards, personal growth, self-confidence, and the ability to touch others through one's passion, were worth every challenge. The festival had shown her that music could be a bridge between people, a way to connect hearts and minds, and a source of strength that could never be taken away. In the days that followed, she continued to play with renewed energy and focus. Her confidence had grown, and she no longer hesitated to share her music, whether in small gatherings, at home, or even in the streets where once she had been ridiculed. She discovered that every performance, no matter how small, was an opportunity to express herself, inspire others, and grow as a musician and as a person. The festival had been a turning point, a moment when she realized the true power of her passion and dedication. She also began to notice the effect her music had on those around her. Friends who had once mocked her now listened with genuine interest. Neighbors would pause to hear her play, and some even asked her to teach them a few notes. Her family, of course, continued to support her quietly, sharing in her joy and pride. The girl realized that music had the power to change perceptions, to soften hearts, and to build bridges where there had been doubt and misunderstanding. The young girl continued to imagine bigger stages and wider audiences. She thought about the day when she could play for people who had never met her, in cities far away, or even for those who could only listen through recordings. Each new dream became a motivation to practice harder, explore more complex pieces, and develop her unique style. She understood that talent was important, but it was persistence, creativity, and emotional expression that would ultimately define her as a musician. Through this journey, she learned valuable life lessons. She understood the importance of resilience, the power of patience, and the value of believing in oneself even when others doubted. She learned that ridicule or criticism could be transformed into motivation, and that personal growth often came from challenges rather than ease. Most importantly, she learned that passion, when nurtured with care and dedication, could become a source of strength, joy, and fulfillment. As the girl continued her musical journey, she carried with her the memory of the festival, the applause, and the faces of those who had listened with awe. That day became a symbol of what was possible when one perseveres, stays true to oneself, and refuses to be defined by the judgments of others. The piano had become not only a tool for expression but also a guide, a mentor, and a companion through the ups and downs of life. Every evening, as she sat before the piano, she thought back to the days when she had been mocked and underestimated. She realized that those moments had been necessary for her growth, teaching her resilience, focus, and the value of inner strength. She no longer felt bitterness toward those who had laughed, only gratitude for the lessons learned and the motivation to keep moving forward. Her journey was her own, and she embraced it fully, knowing that every step brought her closer to becoming the musician she was meant to be. With each passing day, Her skills improved, her confidence deepened, and her love for music grew stronger. The young girl had discovered not only her talent, but also the courage to share it with the world. She had learned that the journey mattered as much as the destination, and that true success lay in self-expression, dedication, and the ability to touch others through the art she loved. Her story was just beginning, and the music she created would continue to shape her life, inspire others, and prove that perseverance and passion could overcome any obstacle. The young girl's reputation in the town began to shift slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. People who had once mocked her persistence started to notice her skill. It was subtle. Someone would pause to listen, a neighbor might nod appreciatively, or a few townspeople would quietly comment on how beautifully she played. Each small acknowledgement filled her with quiet pride, but she remained humble. She knew that her journey was not about recognition, but about the music itself and the emotions it could convey. She continued to practice tirelessly, always seeking to deepen her connection with the piano and refine her ability to express herself through sound. One day, an invitation arrived from a nearby town, asking her to perform at a charity event. The girl felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety. This was a bigger audience than she had ever played for, and the idea of stepping into a new environment made her heart race. But she remembered the festival from before, and how it had taught her the power of preparation and focus. She decided to accept the challenge. The thought of sharing her music with new listeners, touching lives through her melodies, outweighed any fear. She packed her music, adjusted her schedule, and began rehearsing even more diligently. Her practice became more disciplined, yet it remained joyful. She experimented with dynamics, learning how to make some passages soft and intimate, while others were powerful and commanding. She focused on timing, ensuring that every note flowed naturally and every pause carried meaning. She also explored how emotions could influence the speed and touch of her fingers, realizing that music was a living, breathing entity that could speak to anyone willing to listen. As she played, she could feel the story unfolding through her hands, each key pressing forward with purpose. When the day of the charity event arrived, she felt a familiar nervousness. The hall was larger than she expected, with rows of chairs and bright lights that made the space feel almost endless. People she had never met were talking softly, preparing for the performances. She took a deep breath, reminded herself of her months of practice, and stepped onto the stage. Sitting down at the piano, she felt the weight of the moment, but also a thrilling sense of possibility. This was more than a performance. It was an opportunity to connect, to make strangers feel what she felt, and to prove to herself that she could rise to the occasion. As she began to play, the first notes floated through the room. They were soft and tentative at first, then gained strength as she allowed her emotions to guide her. She could see the audience leaning forward, their faces focused, their eyes following each movement of her hands. The room was quiet, but it was a different kind of silence than she had known before. This was not fear or judgment. This was attention, engagement, and anticipation. Each note she played seemed to reach out, touching hearts in ways she could feel without seeing. The middle section of her piece was more complex and emotionally charged. She had chosen a composition that conveyed struggle and hope, reflecting the challenges she had faced in learning and persevering. Her fingers moved with precision and fluidity, the melodies rising and falling with a natural rhythm that carried the story effortlessly. As she played, she could feel the audience responding, leaning into the music, their expressions softening and their breathing slowing as they became absorbed in the emotion she was expressing. It was a powerful reminder of why she had chosen to pursue this path, why every hour of practice and every moment of doubt had been worthwhile. By the time she reached the final section, the music had grown triumphant and uplifting. Her fingers danced over the keys, producing notes that soared and resonated throughout the hall. The audience was completely captivated, hanging on each sound, feeling the story unfold before them. When she finally pressed the last key, the silence that followed was profound, as if everyone was collectively holding their breath, reluctant to break the spell. Then applause erupted, loud, heartfelt, and genuine. It filled the hall, washing over her and bringing tears to her eyes. She had done it. She had shared her passion, her story, and her heart through music, and the audience had felt it. After the performance, people approached her with smiles and compliments. Some expressed astonishment that someone so young could play with such skill and emotion. Others admitted that they had doubted her abilities before, but now they could see the depth of her talent and the dedication behind it. The girl listened politely, feeling gratitude but remaining humble. She understood that the recognition was meaningful, but the true reward was in the music itself, in the way it could move people, inspire them, and convey emotions that words could not capture. In the days following the charity event, she noticed a change in the town's attitude toward her. The people who had once mocked her dedication now looked at her with curiosity and respect. Some children approached her to ask about the piano, expressing interest in learning. Neighbors who had laughed before now nodded appreciatively when they heard her practice. Even those who had never spoken to her seemed to recognize her talent and the effort she had put into it. The girl understood that change did not happen overnight, but persistence and genuine passion could slowly shift the perception of others. She continued to explore new pieces and techniques, eager to expand her musical abilities. Each new challenge pushed her to think creatively and refine her skills. She discovered that music was not just about playing notes correctly. It was about creating experiences, telling stories and evoking emotions. She practiced improvisation, experimenting with spontaneous melodies that reflected her current mood or the environment around her. She began to see the piano not only as an instrument, but as a partner, capable of expressing her innermost thoughts and feelings. As her confidence grew, she also began to mentor younger children who showed interest in music. She shared her knowledge and experiences, encouraging them to explore their passions despite any ridicule or doubt they might face. She taught them that mistakes were part of learning, and that perseverance and dedication were more important than immediate success. In guiding others, she reinforced her own understanding and deepened her appreciation for the journey she had undertaken. Music became not just a personal pursuit, but a way to inspire and uplift others. The girl's dedication began to attract attention from local music teachers and small organizations. Invitations to perform at community gatherings and school events became more frequent. Each performance was an opportunity to refine her skills, reach new audiences, and continue building her confidence. She understood that talent was only one part of success. Discipline, preparation, and the ability to connect emotionally with listeners were equally important. She approached each event with a mixture of excitement and focus, eager to share her music and see the impact it could have on others. Despite the growing recognition, she remained grounded and committed to her personal growth. She continued to practice daily, exploring different styles and compositions. She experimented with dynamics, tempos, and emotional expression, learning how small variations could significantly impact the listener's experience. She also took time to reflect on her performances, noting what went well and where improvements could be made. Her dedication to continual improvement ensured that she never became complacent, always striving to reach new levels of skill and artistry. The girl's journey had taught her more than music. She had learned resilience, patience, and self-confidence. She understood that pursuing a passion often required facing fear, overcoming criticism, and staying committed despite obstacles. She had also learned the value of humility and the importance of connecting with others through shared experiences. Music had become a bridge between her and the world, allowing her to communicate in ways that words alone could never achieve. Each note she played carried not just sound but emotion, intention, and a story that resonated with anyone willing to listen. Through all these experiences, she began to see the transformative power of music both for herself and for others. She recognized that her talent could inspire, comfort, and bring joy to those around her. This understanding motivated her to continue refining her skills, exploring new compositions, and sharing her music whenever possible. The girl realized that her journey was ongoing, that there would always be new challenges to face and new audiences to reach, but she felt ready and eager for whatever lay ahead. Her confidence continued to grow, and she started to embrace opportunities that once would have seemed intimidating. Invitations to perform in neighboring towns or at larger events no longer filled her with fear, but with anticipation and determination. She understood that every performance was an opportunity to learn, grow, and connect. The memory of past ridicule had been replaced by the knowledge that her dedication and passion had the power to overcome doubts and make a meaningful impact on those who listened. In the quiet moments after practice or performance, she often reflected on how far she had come. She thought about the long hours of preparation, the moments of doubt and frustration, and the persistence that had brought her to this point. She realized that each step, Each note played and each challenge faced had shaped her into the musician and person she was becoming. The piano had not only given her a voice, but it also taught her invaluable lessons about life, perseverance, and the importance of following one's passion. Through her journey, the girl had discovered the true essence of music. It was not about applause or recognition, but about the ability to convey emotion, tell stories, and connect with others. She understood that her gift was both a privilege and a responsibility, and she approached it with care, dedication, and humility. Each day at the piano was an opportunity to grow, explore, and share a piece of herself with the world, and she embraced it fully, knowing that the journey was as meaningful as the destination. The girl's journey with the piano had reached a point where her talent, dedication, and passion could no longer be ignored. The town that had once laughed at her determination now watched with admiration and respect. People would stop to listen whenever they heard her playing, and children who had once giggled now whispered in awe. Even those who had been most skeptical could not deny the skill, emotion, and beauty that flowed from her fingertips. The transformation was remarkable, not because of sudden fame, but because of the persistence, patience, and love she had poured into her craft over so many years. She began to receive invitations to perform at larger events, some in neighboring towns and others in schools and community centers where young musicians gathered. Each performance brought a mix of excitement and nerves, but she had learned to channel her energy into her music, letting the piano guide her. She understood that the stage was not a place to prove herself to others, but a place to share a story, to touch hearts, and to create a connection that went beyond words. Every note played carried a piece of her soul, and the audiences could feel it. During one significant performance, she was invited to play at a regional youth music competition. It was the biggest audience she had faced yet, and the pressure was intense. She could feel her heart pounding as she stepped onto the stage, seeing rows of seats filled with people whose attention was entirely on her. The memory of the laughter and ridicule from years ago still lingered in the corners of her mind, but it was no longer a source of fear. Instead, it fueled her determination. She sat down, placed her hands on the keys, and began to play. The music that emerged was powerful, emotional, and precise. She poured every feeling she had into the performance. The years of practice, the quiet hours of dedication, the moments of doubt, and the unwavering hope that had carried her forward. Each note spoke a story, each pause was a reflection of her journey, and each crescendo brought the audience closer to the emotions she was expressing. People leaned forward, captivated by the depth and beauty of the music, and a profound silence filled the hall as everyone listened intently. By the time she reached the final notes, there was a sense of awe in the room. The music had taken on a life of its own, flowing effortlessly and connecting every listener to her story. When she finally lifted her hands from the keys, there was a moment of stillness, as if the world itself had paused. Then applause erupted. Not just polite clapping, but genuine, heartfelt appreciation that resonated with every corner of the hall. She felt a rush of emotion, tears welling in her eyes, knowing that her music had truly reached people in a way that words never could. After the performance, people came forward to congratulate her. Some were amazed that someone so young could play with such emotion and skill. Others admitted that they had once doubted her, but now they could see the depth of her talent and the dedication that had brought her to this moment. She listened with humility, understanding that the recognition was meaningful, but she knew that the true reward was the ability to express herself and touch the hearts of others through her music. The experience gave her a new sense of purpose. She realized that her music could inspire others who had been discouraged, who had faced ridicule, or who doubted themselves. She began to teach and mentor young children in her town, showing them that passion, dedication, and resilience could lead to success, no matter the obstacles. She shared her journey openly, explaining the hours of practice, the mistakes she had made, and the determination that had kept her going. Through her mentorship, she helped others discover their talents and the courage to pursue them. As she continued to perform and teach, she began composing her own pieces. Her music became even more personal, reflecting her thoughts, emotions, and experiences in a way that resonated deeply with listeners. Each composition was unique, a story told without words, yet powerful enough to evoke strong feelings in anyone who heard it. She explored different styles, experimented with harmonies, and allowed her creativity to flow freely. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a tool for self-expression, a companion and a bridge to connect with others. The girl's influence grew beyond her town. Invitations to perform at larger events, workshops, and festivals became more frequent. She met other young musicians, learned new techniques, and shared her experiences with others. Each interaction enriched her understanding of music and deepened her appreciation for the dedication and talent of those around her. She realized that music was not just about personal achievement, but about collaboration, connection, and the sharing of ideas and emotions across cultures and communities. Throughout this journey, she never forgot the challenges she had faced. The ridicule, skepticism, and doubt she had encountered were no longer burdens but lessons that had shaped her resilience and determination. She understood that every challenge had contributed to her growth, teaching her patience, focus, and the importance of believing in herself. The girl knew that the path to success was never easy, but it was the journey with its struggles and triumphs that gave her accomplishments true meaning. Her music continued to touch people in unexpected ways. Parents reported that their children had been inspired to learn an instrument. Teachers noticed students showing greater interest in the arts. Friends and neighbors expressed admiration for her dedication and talent. She realized that her influence extended beyond performance. It was about encouraging others to follow their passions, overcome doubts, and embrace the power of persistence. The girl had become a source of inspiration, showing that even those who were once ridiculed could rise to achieve remarkable things. Despite all the recognition and success, she remained grounded and humble. She knew that music was a lifelong journey, one that required constant learning, exploration, and self-reflection. She continued to practice diligently, challenge herself with new pieces, and explore different styles and techniques. Every day brought an opportunity to grow, to discover new aspects of her talent, and to deepen her connection with the piano. Her dedication never wavered, and she remained committed to sharing her music with others in meaningful ways. The girl also realized the importance of gratitude. She remembered her family's quiet support, the moments of encouragement, and the people who had once believed in her. She understood that her journey was not a solitary one, but a tapestry woven from the support, lessons, and inspiration she had received from others. This awareness made her performances even more meaningful, as she played not only for herself, but in honor of everyone who had contributed to her growth. In the years that followed, her passion for music continued to flourish. She composed, performed, and taught, each day strengthening her skills and deepening her love for the art. She encountered new challenges, faced new audiences, and explored new possibilities, but she remained unwavering in her commitment to music. She understood that her journey would never truly end, for the pursuit of mastery and the expression of creativity were lifelong endeavors. The story of the girl who had once been ridiculed for her piano playing became a source of inspiration in her town and beyond. People remembered her early struggles, her quiet determination, and the way she had transformed ridicule into motivation. Her journey demonstrated the power of persistence, passion, and self-belief, showing that those who dedicate themselves fully to their dreams can achieve remarkable things. The piano, which had once been a source of private joy and solace, had become a medium through which she could inspire and touch countless lives. Through all the experiences, challenges, and successes, the girl remained true to herself. She understood that music was more than performance. It was a way of communicating, connecting, and expressing the deepest parts of her soul. She had learned that the path to fulfillment was paved with dedication, resilience, and an unwavering love for one's passion. And as she sat at her piano each day, she played not only for recognition or applause, but for the pure joy of creating, sharing, and living through music. Her story was a testament to the transformative power of passion, proving that with patience, perseverance, and heart, one can turn ridicule into triumph and dreams into reality.